All right, so we're diving into a chapter someone sent us. It's got some seriously strange stuff going on. Weird computer stuff, cults, even some pretty disturbing nightmares.
Yeah, sounds like we're in for a wild ride.
Right. I mean, where do we even begin?
Well, how about at the beginning? We start with Ben, late at night, working on his computer,
Yeah. And then things start to get really creepy.
flickering screens, chanting voices. It's classic tech horror stuff.
And then there's that whole hypersphere thing, just pops up out of nowhere.
Right, and the computer voice doesn't really explain it. It's like the author is just throwing this mysterious concept at us and expecting us to figure it out.
But isn't that kind of the point? This whole chapter is full of mysteries and hidden meaning. It's like the author wants us to be just as confused as Ben is.
Definitely. I think the author's playing with the idea of hidden knowledge here. The hyperspheres, especially since it's never fully explained, could be this esoteric concept, like higher dimensions of reality or planes of existence.
Whoa, okay. So we're talking like beyond our normal perception, like stuff we can't even comprehend.
Exactly. It's like the author is dangling this mysterious carrot in front of us, making us crave the knowledge that Ben is seeking.
But then, boom, right back to normal life. Ben's wife is downstairs making dinner, and it's almost like the whole computer thing never happened. That shift felt kind of jarring to me.
It does, doesn't it? And I think that's deliberate. The author's using that contrast to heighten the sense of unease. We're left wondering, did that really happen, or is Ben losing it?
Right. It makes us question how reliable Ben is as a narrator. I mean, can he just snap back to reality that easily after something so disturbing?
It's a good question. And it makes us pay closer attention to everything Ben experiences from this point on.
Okay, so then we get the postcards.
Uh-huh.
Ein Juden, pine cone, and that seal. Oh man, that seal.
Yeah, that imagery is pretty hard to forget.
Definitely. So what do you make of it? Is the author just trying to shock us, or is there something deeper going on?
I think it's both. The author's using these disturbing visuals to create a sense of dread and mystery, but there's also a thematic purpose. Those postcards with their cryptic messages and that unsettling imagery, it's all classic cult stuff.
Yeah, the Black Eyster cult. It's like they're lurking in the shadows, messing with Ben's head.
Right. And the fact that Ben can't find any real information about them or about E. Bowler, who sent the email, only makes it creepier.
It's like he's being manipulated by forces he doesn't even understand. It's
Mhm.
that classic horror trope, the sense of being powerless against something unknown.
Exactly. And the author nails it. That feeling of being drawn into something you can't escape, that's what makes this chapter so unsettling.
Then we get to the nightmares. They start out kind of pleasant, actually, but quickly take a turn for the worse.
Yeah. That progression is fascinating, isn't it? From peaceful dreams to these terrifying visions. And then there's the nine great gaps representing hyperspace.
Right, those really stood out to me. It's like each gap is another level of reality, another dimension that Ben is being exposed to.
I think the nightmares are where the author starts to connect those esoteric ideas with Ben's psychology. It's like his subconscious is trying to process this concept of hyperspace, and it's manifesting in these increasingly disturbing dreams.
So the nightmares are like a visual representation of Ben's journey into the unknown.
That's a great way to put it. And the progression from pleasant to terrifying could symbolize how seductive hidden knowledge can be. It draws you in with promises of enlightenment, but it can also lead to some pretty dark places.
And then there's that line, for he had been, still unbeknownst to himself, subconsciously initiated by the Black Eyster cult to the esoteric hyperspherical mysteries. That's just chilling.
Yeah, that's when things really start to get serious.
Yeah.
The idea of being subconsciously initiated suggests that Ben is being drawn into something without even realizing it.
Like he has no control over it. It's happening whether he wants to or not.
Exactly. And that raises a whole bunch of questions. Is he being groomed,
Yeah.
brainwashed? Is he even a reliable narrator at this point? I mean, how much of what he's experiencing is real and how much is a product of this subconscious initiation?
So we've got Ben spiraling into this world of the Black Eyster cult, these unsettling nightmares, and this concept of hyperspace that's both fascinating and terrifying. It's like the author is throwing everything at us at once, and we're just trying to keep up.
And that's the beauty of it. It's a chaotic, unpredictable ride, and we're strapped in for the duration.
Well said. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's take a step back and consider the bigger picture. What do you think the author is trying to achieve with all this weirdness?
I think the author is setting the stage for a battle between Ben's ordinary life and these forces of the unknown that are trying to pull him in. The question is, will he resist? Or will he succumb to the allure of the hypersphere and the Black Eyster cult?
Ooh, good question. And what do you think the consequences will be either way?
That's what we'll have to keep reading to find out. But I have a feeling it won't be pretty.
Okay, so we've got this unsettling blend of technology, cults, and nightmares, all centered around Ben and this concept of the hypersphere. Where do you think this is all heading?
I think the author is setting us up for a wild ride. A clash between the ordinary and the extraordinary, the rational and the irrational. It's going to be a battle for Ben's mind, body, and soul.
Sounds intense. And speaking of intense, the chapter then introduces us to Harold D. Munch, a private investigator with, well, a very unique way of looking at the world, almost like he's from another planet.
Harold D. Munch, he's definitely a character that'll stick with you. He's like a walking, talking paradox, and I can't wait to see what he brings to the story.
It's like the author just threw a curveball right at us. Should we dive into the weird and wonderful world of Harold D. Munch next?
Let's do it. I'm dying to know how he fits into this whole crazy puzzle. Harold D. Munch, yeah, this guy. Right from his first line, he throws us for a loop, talking about Freud, the world being like a mortise and tenon.
Yeah, he's definitely not your average detective.
And then he compares, well, let's just say male anatomy to a mouse hole.
Okay, so maybe not your average detective at all.
Right. It's like he's speaking in code, using these crazy metaphors to try and make sense of the world.
So is this just a quirky character trait, or is there something more to it? Like, is the author using Munch to say something bigger about the story?
I think it's both. On the one hand, Munch is definitely a unique character, but I also think the author is using him to introduce a different perspective, one that challenges our assumptions about reality.
So he's not just there for comic relief. He actually has a role to play in unraveling the mysteries of this chapter.
Exactly. He's like this weird philosophical detective who sees the world in a way that no one else does.
It's interesting that he's hired to find this missing baby, but he seems more interested in philosophizing than actually investigating. Is that just bad detective work, or is the author hinting at something else?
I don't think it's just bad detective work. I think Munch's approach might be a way for the author to show the limits of logic and reason when you're dealing with something truly bizarre.
So he's like, the usual methods don't apply here. We need to think outside the box.
Right. He's looking beyond the surface, trying to find a deeper meaning in everything.
So in a way, Munch is kind of like Ben, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're both struggling with forces they don't understand, just in different ways.
That's a great point. Ben's being pulled into this world of esoteric mysteries, while Munch is trying to make sense of the world through his own brand of philosophy.
They're both on these quests for knowledge, but they're approaching it from totally different angles.
Exactly. And that's what makes their juxtaposition so interesting. It's like the author is showing us two sides of the same coin.
Then we have these random bits of text scattered throughout the chapter. Stuff about fonts, cruelty, a lock and key, even red spider mites. At first I thought they were just random tangents, but now I'm not so sure.
Those fragments are definitely intriguing, aren't they? They seem so disconnected from the main narrative, yet they might hold the key to unlocking the chapter's deeper meaning.
Like, what's the deal with the editor's note about cruelty being the way of nature? It's attributed to everyone from Gandhi to, well, a question mark.
Right, and that's the thing. It's funny, but it's also kind of disturbing. By attributing that quote to such a diverse range of figures, the author is making a point about the universality of cruelty.
So it's not just about bad people doing bad things. It's about this inherent darkness that exists in all of us.
Exactly. It's a part of the human condition, whether we like it or not.
It's like these random snippets are actually little windows into the chapter's bigger themes. The nature of reality, the search for knowledge, the darkness lurking beneath the surface.
That's a great way to put it. It's like the author is giving us all these pieces of a puzzle, and it's up to us to figure out how they fit together.
So we've got Ben spiraling into the world of the Black Oyster cult, and we've got Harold D. Munch dropping philosophical truth bombs while looking for a missing baby. Do you think their paths will cross?
It's definitely possible. The author has set up these two seemingly separate storylines, each exploring different aspects of the chapter's themes. But what if they're meant to converge?
What if Munch's investigation leads him to the Black Oyster cult? Or what if Ben's journey into the Hypersphere somehow helps him find the missing baby?
Now that would be a twist. It's like we're on the edge of some major revelation, but we're missing that one crucial piece of the puzzle.
And maybe those random snippets of text hold the key. Maybe if we take another look at them, we'll finally understand what the author is trying to tell us.
It's worth a shot. They're like clues scattered throughout the chapter, just waiting to be deciphered.
All right, let's do it. Let's go back to those fragments and see if we can crack the code. Maybe then we can finally unlock the mysteries of this chapter.
Sounds like a plan. Let's get to work.
All right, so we've gone pretty deep into this chapter. Uh, Ben's weird experiences, Harold D. Munch's mind-bending metaphors. But those random bits of text keep popping up.
Yeah, they're like puzzle pieces scattered everywhere. We got to figure out how they all fit together.
Okay, so let's start with the fonts. Seems out of place, right?
Totally random at first glance, but maybe the author is saying something about how language shapes our reality.
Okay, yeah. Like, the font changes how we read, how we feel about the text.
Exactly. It can even make us trust something more or less.
So maybe the author's pointing out how language can be used to manipulate us.
Right. Like how words can be twisted to control our thoughts, even our beliefs.
Okay, I can see that. And what about the cruelty thing? It felt like the author was saying something about human nature, but how does that connect to everything else?
Well, it ties into this whole power dynamic, right? The Black Eyster cult is definitely trying to control Ben, and Munch, even though he's a detective, seems more interested in the nature of cruelty than actually solving the case.
Right, right. Like cruelty is just this underlying force in the world, shaping everything.
It's a part of who we are, whether we want to admit it or not.
Whoa. Okay, starting to see the connections here. But the lock and key story, that one still has me stumped.
It's definitely one of the weirder parts. Bizarre, kind of sexual, hard to pin down.
Yeah, exactly. But could it be a metaphor for forbidden knowledge?
That's a good thought. The lock is the secret, the key is how to unlock it, but what happens when you do? What's the price you pay?
And remember, the narrator mentioned someone being in prison for learning about the Hypersphere.
Oh, right, so maybe the author is warning us that some knowledge is too dangerous to have.
Like opening Pandora's box, once you see what's inside, you can't unsee it.
Exactly. You can't go back to the way things were.
Okay, one last piece of the puzzle. The Red Spider Mite essay. What was the author even thinking with that one?
It's so absurd, right? But that's probably the point.
So it's not really about the mites at all.
I think it's a satire on human hypocrisy. We're so quick to exploit others, even for the smallest reasons.
So it's actually a commentary on us, on our own messed up priorities.
Right. We justify our actions, even when they're harmful, even when they make no sense.
Wow. I never would have connected those dots. So it's like all these random pieces actually reflect the chapter's big themes.
They're not random at all. They're all connected, highlighting the search for knowledge, the darkness within us, the consequences of our actions.
It's like the author's saying, look closer. There's more going on here than meets the eye.
And that's what makes this chapter so engaging. It challenges us to think for ourselves, to dig deeper.
It's a reminder that good literature isn't just a story. It's an invitation to explore, to question, to uncover hidden meanings.
And sometimes the most rewarding journeys are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
Well said. Listener, as you keep reading, pay attention to those little details. Those seemingly insignificant bits of text might be the key to unlocking the whole story.
And don't be afraid to question your own interpretations. The beauty of literature is that it allows for multiple perspectives.
This deep dive has been a wild one. It's amazing how these seemingly random snippets revealed so much.
Yeah, like solving a puzzle piece by piece.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be back with more deep dives into the world of literature, so stay tuned.
Keep those pages turning and keep those minds open.